Wakati anaugua sisi tulishirikishwa kama vyombo vya ulinzi na usalama.
When he fell ill, we were involved as security and safety agencies. We needed to know how the Honorable President's condition was progressing, so we visited him regularly, both in the morning and evening. We had our roles as heads of security agencies, with me as their chairman.
Na mimi nikiwa kama mwenyekiti wao wa vyombo.
As heads of these agencies, we definitely needed to consult on our course of action. Later, we took him to Mzena Hospital. Mzena Hospital was relatively calm, not many people could enter there. Only a few could, but even then, we limited the number of people to give him space to rest properly. Therefore, his treatment shifted there, and doctors were constantly attending to him.
Siku moja kabla ya kifo chake, hali ilibadilika kidogo.
A day before his death, the situation changed slightly, and he himself realized it. I think he knew, guided by the Almighty, that he wouldn't recover.
Alimuongoza kwamba hatapona. Alichosema, nirudisheni nyumbani.
What he said was, "Take me home."
Nikafie nyumbani. Tukasema, Mheshimiwa, hapana, hapa uko kwenye mikono salama.
We said, "No, Your Excellency. You're in safe hands here. Let the doctors continue treating you."
Niseme jambo ambalo labda alikuwahi kusemwa.
Let me say something that perhaps was not mentioned before because I was there. He called me as the CDF and said, "I can't recover.
Waamuru hao madaktari wanirudishe nyumbani."
Instruct the doctors to send me home, I told him. Your Excellency, I don't have that authority.
Sina mamlaka hayo.
He said, "So, the CDF can't instruct the doctors to send me home," I told him. "Health matters are not under the jurisdiction of the CDF, Your Excellency. Please stay calm, let the doctors decide.
Utulie. Madaktari watatuambia.
They will inform us what to do."
Baada alipoona kwamba nimekuwa na msimamo huo,
seeing my firm stance, he then asked me to call his parish priest from Oyster Bay or St. Peter's, Father Makubi, but he also added that I should call Cardinal Pengo.
Lakini akaongeza akasema namuomba Kardinali Pengo.
It was morning, the next day, and we tried reaching Cardinal Pengo, but he didn't pick up. He was in a service. He asked me, "CDF, haven't you reached Pengo?" I told him, "He's in a service, sir. He'll come when he's done. We've already sent a driver to pick him up." He fell silent.
Kwa hiyo wakaja wote.
So both of them came. Cardinal Pengo and Father Makubi accompanied each other. According to Catholic rituals, they prayed for him and administered the sacrament of the sick. After they finished praying for him, he rested.
Kwa hiyo alipomaliza kumsalia, akapumzika. Lakini ilipofika saa 8 mchana.
But around noon, they called us from the hospital, reaching out to me as the chief of the armed forces and also to the DGIS and IGP. They told us his condition wasn't good and asked us to come.
Hali ya mheshimiwa sio nzuri sana. Hebu njoni.
We went there and found him calm, but he couldn't speak anymore. We sat there waiting and called other doctors. I remember we called Professor Marcelo, and Professor Janabi was there all along, adding to his strength. They tried treating him there, saying, "Let's see." So we continued to wait until evening.
Tukaendelea kukaa mpaka jioni. Kufika jioni saa 12:30 hivi au saa 1 kasoro akakata roho.
Around 12:30 or 1 o'clock, he passed away. We, the heads of security agencies, were there, 3 of us, me as the CDF, the IGP, and the DGIS.
Nani wa kumwarifu wa kwanza?
Who should be informed first?
Makamu wa rais wakati huo hayupo Dar es Salaam, alikuwa
The
Tanga.
vice president was not in Dar es Salaam by then, she was in Tanga. The prime minister wasn't in Dar es Salaam either, I think he was in Dodoma or somewhere else. The chief secretary wasn't in Dar es Salaam, he was also in Dodoma. So there were only 3 of us in Dar es Salaam.
Tuliokuwa Dar es Salaam tulikuwa watatu tu. Tukasema kwa kuwa rais yuko Tanga, hebu tumwambie.
Since the vice president was in Tanga, we decided to inform the prime minister and the chief secretary first without disclosing anything.
Tukamuomba waziri mkuu aje na katibu.
So we asked the prime minister and the chief secretary to come, and fortunately they came early.
Bahati nzuri wakaja mapema. Sasa mimi kama mwenyekiti wa
As the chairman of the heads of security agencies, I had to disclose that the president had passed away.
Rais ameshatutoka. Kwa tukaanza kushauriana tunafanyeje.
So we started consulting on what to do next. Who should announce this to the media so that the citizens know?
Tukaanza kutafuta katiba sasa inasema nini.
That's when we started looking into the Constitution to see what it says.
So mtu pekee anaweza kutangaza kwenye vyombo vya habari ni makamu wa rais.
According to the Constitution, only the vice president can announce such news in the media. But she was in Tanga, so how do we inform her? Do we call her or ask her to come? But we needed to communicate differently since she was in Tanga.
Lakini sasa ikabidi yafanyike mawasiliano mengine kumweleza akiwa Tanga. Lakini kabla ya kutangaza tukasema familia yake haijui.
But before announcing, we decided that his family should be informed first. His wife was here at the State House, she didn't know. His mother was sick in Chato, she wasn't told either. We couldn't inform them over the phone. Who would go and inform his mother and his wife? How would they convey the message? Fortunately, we found people here who went to inform them, and others went to Chato. We arranged for a charter plane before the announcement so that they would receive the news before it reached the media. So, someone went to Chato via charter plane. That's why you see the news was announced around 5 o'clock in the evening.
Ndio maana unakuta toka saa 12:30 kuja kutangazwa saa 5 usiku.
The big task was how to swear in the new president. There were two thoughts: swear her in after the burial or before. There was some debate on this. But eventually, we decided that the vice president should be sworn in as the president. That's why it took 2 days, which is not constitutionally allowed. She had to be sworn in within 24 hours.
Ndio maana zilipita siku mbili. Kikatiba haitakiwi within 24 hours. Takiwa awe pronounced rais.
So on the 17th, 18th, and 19th, she was sworn in. There were discussions, but we thank God they accepted it.
Lakini namna ya kumwapisha nako kukawa na mjadala.
However, there was also a debate on how to swear her in. Should it be a ceremony or not? Some said it shouldn't be a ceremony. Others said it should. As the head of the armed forces, I said there must be a parade. The flag of the commander-in-chief must be hoisted in a parade. But there was a bit of tension. No, we're in mourning, there's no parade or anything, they said, but I told them she's the commander-in-chief being sworn in. If she's not sworn in according to these procedures, the military won't recognize her.
Asipoapishwa kwa taratibu hizo za kitaifa, jeshi halitamtambua. Mheshimiwa Samia ameingia madarakani kutokana na tukio.
President Samia came to power because of this incident. The incumbent president passed away. It was a unique experience for Tanzania for the first time. We had never experienced such a situation, but we thank God the transition was smooth. According to the Constitution, it's well stipulated that if the president dies or fails to fulfill their duties, the vice president assumes power, as per the Constitution. Perhaps people had forgotten the constitutional provisions a bit, but we said we have procedures to follow, and if we follow them, there shouldn't be a problem. We need to adhere to them for a smooth transition. That's how President Samia smoothly took over.
Lakini tukasema tuna taratibu, nadhani tukizifuata hazina shida. Tuzizingatie zile ili transition iwe smooth. Mimi kwa maoni yangu ni mzuri kwa sababu anawashirikisha watu.
In my opinion, she is doing well because she involves people, and her way of working is very good because sometimes those advising her might make mistakes, but they correct them through consultation. She involves many people.
Lakini anashirikisha watu wengi. nawashirikisha, mnaonaje huyu, mnaonaje huyu, mnaonaje hivyo, maamuzi yake mnaonaje tukiamua hili. Anashirikisha taasisi kitaaluma.